aggregated exchange context. So what does that mean? Instead of people just running around in small-scale relationships, all of a sudden, what it takes to get styles taking off at this rate and to become so pervasive in the social network is people have to come together with a lot of other people at varying thresholds of influence. And that's the only type of scenario, aggregation, that we see people settling on standardized styles like this instead of essentially reshuffling the deck. So I've described that scenario, what happens after AD 1000. After that, we start getting these major stylistic changes that occur every 200 years or so. The only way that we get it, aggregated community interaction. I argue this fully supports a shift in social and political organization from small-scale hunter-gatherers here in the Great Lakes to larger corporate middle-range societies. This isn't revolutionary because this model's been out there for a while, but it hasn't been, it's basically been addressed at a much smaller geographic and social scale. It hasn't been fully explored at a regional level. So that aggregated exchange content, that's a spatial change. That's moving outside of your home community and coming together with others at a central point. That's a different way to behave than, say, highly mobile, small-scale hunter-gatherers. And so I think that this is evidence that we're seeing emergent tribalization in Native American communities on the ground at this time. The way that I framed it in my dissertation is that what we know about tribal social organization is that by its very nature, there's no central permanent authority that is directing people to behave a certain way. It moves around. Authority moves around. It's situationally dependent. And if that's the case, then it takes a lot for people across a region to all decide this is what we're doing. It takes a lot. It has to go beyond the household level. People across a region have to decide this is what we're doing. And then that central planning mechanism is gone. That's what you see with tribal social organization. So in other words, everything is situationally dependent. The people who are coming together and deciding this is what we're doing do it for a particular purpose, and they go back to doing what they were doing at their local level. This is a regional versus local phenomenon. And you can think about it, because people are in a distributed social network without any kind of permanent centralized political authority, this is a complex system. In a complex systems literature, this is what this is, and nobody's ever framed it that way. So I think that emergent tribalization is a pretty good expression of a complex system. At least that's what I'm arguing. So that is, because I'm over time, a very basic overview of my dissertation research. I wanted to make sure to point out in my publication agenda, the first publications I had scheduled to come out in 2013, but this has since been pushed back because I had a USAID publication that took precedent over it. But this is the first publication that's going to come out of my dissertation research that I expect to get out any moment, dealing with the small sample anxiety issue, so how computer simulation can get us into more satisfying archaeological territory regarding interpretation. And then summer 2014, I'm coming out with a publication for a project that I'm working on in Detroit, which I have a little screenshot of that I'm going to show you here in a minute. And then 2015, I have a social theory article coming out from this dissertation research. And then I have a research agenda that begins with the local archaeological field school that we're going to be running here in the summer. I see some students here. You're going to come work with me, right? Okay? And then in addition, so what I'm going to continue to do is improve upon these models, and I have another model that wasn't used in my dissertation research that is going to be joined with the model I just showed you. But this new model is a community model that incorporates variables like fertility and mortality and kinship, gender within different types of communities. So I'm building upon the work that I did, but carrying the methodological work forward. And then finally, I have a couple of applied projects using geospatial technologies here in the area. Let's see. So the type of model that I built for my dissertation research dealing with archaeology, I'm also working with researchers at Michigan State to take that technology and apply it to issues related to the connectivity of communities and travel behavior. So you can use this technology from a number of different things. I think an interesting aspect of this research is that this model, NSF really likes this type of methodology, and so we receive money for it. And I think that these explorations are only going to get better. The technology is valuable, so that's a snapshot of what I do. So with that, I thank you very much for your invitation to be here, not only today, but for the last semester and the semester for many of you, and I'm happy to take your questions.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about what you already publish and also about your work on the Enbridge oil spill?
Okay, so the work that I published so far, I did a geospatial analysis of rock art sites in the Lake of the Woods region of Ontario, and what we were trying to do was look at, is rock art scattered randomly across the landscape, or are people actively communicating symbolically with each other, and if they are, then are there patterns? And the short answer is yes. There's intentionality here, that people are engaging each other actively, it's not just random patterning, and geographic information systems allowed us to do that. The Enbridge oil project that you're referring to, that I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about because it has to do with partnering with Native American communities along the Kalamazoo River, and frankly, I'm not clear to talk fully about that yet. But I'd just like to say that I'm working with researchers from Michigan State in collaboration with certain Native American bands in the Kalamazoo River drainage area to use GIS to really fully understand what the oil spill, the Enbridge oil spill that happened in 2010 actually did to traditional cultural properties on the ground. Because there are many Native American communities who have existed along that corridor and who still exist there today. And when the Enbridge oil spill happened, there was this big rush to get them to settle all of a sudden. And what we realized was, when I looked at the GIS, the spatial data, that they were, in our mind, being rushed to an agreement that hadn't been fully considered yet. So we're trying to assist them in their quest to fully understand what that oil spill has actually done to the traditional cultural properties. That's all I really want to say about that, because it's of a sensitive nature. Does that answer your question?
I really liked your research paradigm that you put up at the beginning, what you're interested in, and then how you're going to explore what you're interested in, and then who cares. Can you elaborate on that last part of the paradigm for us, given your dissertation research about finding that the aggregated community interaction was what you found? So now tell us why we should care.
Because so what do you have here? There are a couple of different dimensions to that question. In other words, there are multiple audiences who should care. All right. There are the archaeologists who work with this data, from a scholarly perspective, who are always looking for new ways to tell stories and interpret them in a way consistent with their methodologies and research objectives, okay? So archaeologists should care. More importantly, anyone who's interested in Native American cultural history, our shared cultural resources as not just the Native communities, it's part of our story too. You should care that what's happening here is we're moving people from a scenario in our minds where they were kind of here and they're gone, and they left some stuff around, and we dig it up and, interpret it through our lens. What it's really doing is the same. These people are making active choices. They're having complex regional interactions at multiple scales, and they're communicating symbolically in very complex ways. That's a different story then. I mean, there's Indians who used to be here before the white folks got here. That's a different way to think about it. So I like to think of it's highlighting how flexible and adaptive and ingenious indigenous communities work. These are choices people are making. This isn't just stuff that's happening.
Can you talk about how this helps to counteract the racism both in anthropology and in the culture at large?
In my mind, what it does is, you all, when I say you all, I should say we all. But I say you all because in my head, I'm still from Ohio and not from Michigan, where in Ohio, there is no Native representation on the ground. Here in Michigan, it's easier to visualize Native Americans. They're here because people go to their casinos, right? So you can see that part of it. But there are places in the Midwest where people don't recognize that there was a Native presence there before Europeans showed up, okay? And so maybe it's kind of an obvious point to us here because of the recognized tribes that are here in the state of Michigan, but in other parts of the Midwest, there's no part of the Native American story being told at all to the popular culture. And this is, I think, a nice way to contribute to that.
I just want to confirm that I understand what you meant by aggregated, what's the term, aggregated?
Aggregated exchange and
Exchange. It's not sort of a handful of individuals going about, you're actually doing communities exchanging. Is that what you meant by?
You need the style, you need the people who are actively engaged in this social process. So this is an abstract model. It doesn't account for everyone in the community. It accounts for the people engaged in the process.
But it's not something where you just have sort of random people wandering about.
No. We know this is, we're coming here to interact it could be any number of reasons. For marriage purposes, for economic purposes.
So it has to be more purposeful for the actual exchange of style.
It's a scheduled event. People know what we're doing.
I don't understand one part of your presentation. When you talk about this new aggregated exchange, you talk about it as a decentralized tribal authority when in other cultural contexts, when you see a standardization of style, what you see is a standardization of accumulated political power and central authority. So why isn't this an example of growing new, strong central authority in these communities?
When we think about, well, first of all,